It's pretty hot. I hope everybody's been staying hydrated and out of the sun and taking it really easy. I appreciate your coming to practice together this evening so we can take a look at this wonderful koan, so apt, Tozan's no cold or heat. It's a kind of instruction for how to practice in intense times, whether that intensity is temperature, inclement weather, or any sort of environmental or emotional weather. How do we practice with it? We go to the place where there is no heat or cold. So what is this place that he's referring to? I'll read you the koan. It begins with an introduction. It's pretty rarefied language, so I will be looking into the meaning of some of the more obscure references. So don't worry, just listen to the words. So the introduction, the words which command the universe are obeyed throughout the ages. The spirit able to quell the tiger amazes even thousands of the holy ones. His words are matchless. His spirit prevails everywhere. If you want to go through with your advanced training, you must enter the great master's forge. Tell me, who would ever show such spirit? See the following. And now the main subject. A monk said to Tozan, cold and heat descend upon us. How can we avoid them? Tozan said, why don't you go to where there is no heat or cold? The monk said, where is the place where there is no cold or heat? Tozan said, when cold, let it be so cold that it kills you. When hot, let it be so hot that it kills you. And then there's a verse. A helping hand, but still 1,000-fathom cliff. Show and hen, no arbitrary distinction here. The emerald palace shines in the bright moonlight. Clever Conroe climbs the steps and finds it empty. So that's the formal koan. The master in this koan is Tozan Ryokai, who is a great master, also known as Dongshan Lianjie, who is in our lineage, a great Tang dynasty Zen master who figures in many of the koans. His insight is clear, and his ability to cut right through to the chase is demonstrated in this koan. This is the Zen master who taught about the 5 ranks. If you are not familiar with those, they're ways of realizing, they're points of view of realizing and expressing the relationship between the relative and the absolute. And this is exactly the gist of what he's trying to help this monk clarify here. Tozan was known for close attention that he brings to the practice of Zazen. And in this koan, he's asking us for the same close attention to our experience of Zazen, of temperature, our experience closely attended to, any kind of experience in any and all conditions of our life, anything that comes up. How do we relate to the relative experiences in our life? And how do we find liberation even within the relative, even within the difficulties, even within the intensity. How can we be free from heat and cold? Excuse me, I'm needing to drink something. Where is this place? Asked the monk of the master. And sitting in Zazen, especially when it's so hot, we can drift into a kind of quiet stupor, forgetting to claim every morsel of awareness alive in this very moment, forgetting because of the attempt to somehow escape the immediacy of the intensity. With an exacting practice of Zazen, then even if we are torporous in intense heat, as we are today, we penetrate to total potential within the torpor, not looking from outside, but indwelling as torpor. Laying claim to our experience of torpor. Master Yuan Wu, who put together the koan collection from which in which this koan appears, introduces the koan by saying, "The words which command the universe are obeyed throughout the ages." Now, Yuan Wu was also a great Zen master. And so we have to be really careful when we take the language in the conventional way. He says, "The words which command the universe are obeyed throughout the ages." What does he mean by words which command the universe? Are there any words that command the universe? So that's the first part of the koan. What are these words that command the universe? Are they actually words? And if not, what does command the universe? Then he goes on to say, if you want to go through with your advanced training, if you want to keep going, you must first enter the great master's forge. And actually today, all of us entered the great master's forge, the great words that command the universe. What a perfect image for today. Most of us have a limited experience with a forge, but do know that a forge is hot, intense, and it's where metal is softened and shaped. That's what Zazen can feel like. Maybe more exactly what it feels like during a sesshin, an intensive practice of time, a time of practice, when practice becomes so much more intense, so much more concentrated, relentless. There's a relentlessness in retreat, in sesshin. And we have to relax into it, just the way metal relaxes in intense heat, so that it can be shaped for whatever use it will serve. So this use by Yuan Wu of entering the master's forge is a way to instruct us to relax so deeply, especially in the midst of intensity. How do we relax that deeply? What is your experience of that? Because usually in intensity, we tend to contract and go up against. When it comes now to facing great heat or cold, how do we enter the great master's forge? We should look at who or what is in charge of this moment. What is in charge of this moment? What forces command the universe right now in this heat? And how can we relate to them? This heat that we are all contending with as it originates moment by moment in experience. A monk asked, "Cold and heat descend upon us. How can we avoid them?" So he's really wanting to avoid it. And we all can want to avoid it. What are you doing right now to avoid the heat? Maybe closing up the house in the early morning, drinking plenty of water, staying out of the sun, maybe using a fan, or you have some added resource of air conditioning, which is something that we opened up for the use of the Sangha during today. And some of you took advantage of that to go over to a nice, cool Zen center for a few hours. So it's easy to avoid this heat when the right conditions are available, when we have suitable devices. But what about when we don't? When they are not available? When the power goes out? Or there's nothing left to do but experience the heat? How do you go to a place where there is no heat? If it's the all prevailing condition, if all of reality is heat and the air conditioning and the fan isn't working. The monk asks, where is there no heat or cold? He's fishing around in comfortable, familiar, conceptual, spatial territory where the experience is not. The experience of intense heat is not anywhere but right here. And it's not in the outer circumstances, it's in the experience of it. So he's following the words, not realizing he's being given a method of changing his bones. And that's what we do in Zen. We change our bones. It's in the body, meaning the skeletal supports become fresh and whole, the experiential skeleton. In every step we take. But we need to be willing, as Dongshin says, to die to our conceptual life and take the backward step directly into the experience itself. Forget the words. Free the self of concepts, the conceptual self. Let it drop off. This is really radical. So Tozan presses the point. When it's cold, let it be so cold that it kills you. When it's hot, let it be so hot that it kills you. The first time I heard this, I really was struck by fear. Oh no. Is that what this means? We really, we hear the word kill, and immediately the self is summoned, the self that we are thoroughly identified with. Everything that stands in the way of our essential vitality is called up in this particular way of phrasing it. And freedom of heart comes when we release the self from that burden, when the self is liberated from that conventional way of organizing and gathering the self against or separate from conditions and experience. And as long as the self is held in opposition to conditions, we suffer. When we bring all of our strength and resolution to the conditions, whatever they are, then whatever is happening is okay. Whenever we commit 100% to Zazen, it's the same as committing 100% to our life, any minute in our life, any moment. It's reality as it is. We're committing to reality as it is. Even the most difficult conditions are ever just what they are. And what is the experience of non-opposition? How does it change the life of the self? What self experiences the place beyond heat or cold? Who experiences beyond heat or cold? And then the verse follows, and it says, a helping hand, but still 1,000-fathom cliff. Tozan is reaching out beyond heat and cold, but the monk only sees the self, and the self only sees the 1,000-fathom cliff, an inaccessible precipice, a great fall off. He can't let go enough of the self to take the hand that's offered by Tozan. Then he says, show and hen, no arbitrary distinction here. Well, we can't possibly know what that means. It's a reference to Tozan's 5 ranks. The relationship between real and apparent, show and hen, real and apparent. And even these terms, real and apparent, already turn the mind toward interpretation, separate us. But let's remember that the words relative and absolute, and you who experience all this, are just tools, skillful means, pointing to the reality, which is never separate. It is all arising together all the time. Those terms are means to help us reorient toward our experience, toward experience. Tozan's words resolve the monk's question very directly. When you are heat, when you're in heat, let heat kill you. When you're in cold, let cold kill you. It's very direct direction. It's not necessary to look for meaning beyond the fact that this is instruction. He's saying to us, die to your concepts, dive into your experience. Dive into your experience. I think of the monks that have immolated themselves in Vietnam and now in great numbers in Tibet in order to call attention to the inhuman conditions. And what that must be like. I mean, they're really literally doing this. There is no avoiding that experience. So diving to our concepts. The next line in the verse is, the ancient palace of crystal shines in the bright moonlight. That's an image that is describing the clarity of Buddha nature. The ancient palace of crystal shines in the bright moonlight, the transcendental realm of untrammeled freedom, where the totality becomes manifestly evident. The mind that is awake shines in the moonlight. Not just the Buddha of 2,600 years ago, but that's the potential that this mind that all of us have, that we access through experience directly, it can come to awaken to. And then the line, he says, there are 2 translations here that I wanted to just bring out. So one is, clever Conroe climbs the steps and finds it empty. Clever Conroe is a reference to an old, hold on. A legend tells of a clever, fast-running dog, Conroe, that chased a hare. And both ran so fast that eventually they fell dead of exhaustion. Well, may that not be the case. But another translation reads, "A sneaky dog climbs the stairs for naught." And the monk's failure to grasp Tozan's meaning outside the words, "The dog climbs the stairs and finds nothing there." That's the meaning of that line. It finds nothing there. We climb and we climb and we climb and we climb. We search and we search and we search. We return again and again and again, trying to figure out our life, the secret to our life, the key. And what do we find? Nothing. But that's not the nothing of voidness or existential nothingness that leads to despair. It's the nothing in our language, which is no thing. And really, that's the essence of the Heart Sutra. There is no thing, the no thingness of the self or of anything in our life. Meaning not that it is not filled with stuff and filled with self, but it's all temporary and it's all collaboratively arising. And it has its duration and then it passes away, including heat, including cold. The truth of the no permanent inherent self, the characteristic passing of all things. In this heat, this condition of 113 degrees, 113 degrees, is happening due to a lot of codependent arisings. The tilt of the earth toward the sun in this season, atmospheric pressure, a high pressure system that creates a heat dome, which pushes out cooler, fast moving air and squeezes clouds away. And the ground baking in the sunlight accumulates energy. And all of our building materials create a heat island effect in cities, which then further elevates heat. And the melting polar regions, which used to be a refrigerant, is less able to do that work. So everything is collaborating to create today, the heat of today. This is the relative world of changing and interrelated conditions. And this is where we encounter intense heat, intensity of all sorts. When we go to the place of no heat and no cold, this is no place. There is no place. But right here, in the ancient palace of crystal, awakened mind and heart, without grabbing onto anything, without pushing away anything, without holding on to words, without pushing away experience. So Tozan wrote a short poem, which I can only read to you in translation. At his great awakening, he had had many awakenings, but one that finally relieved him of his doubt was when he saw his shadow cast on the water while wading a stream. And this is what he wrote: "Long seeking it through others, I was far from reaching it. Now I go by myself. I meet it everywhere. It is just I myself, and I am not itself. Understanding this way, I can be as I am." So that's his encouragement to all of us. We go seeking through others. And the Buddha did for a long time also. It's an important part of spiritual development. And finally, we need to turn the gaze within and honor our own source of experience. Honor our own experience, which will show us the way, which will clarify all of our questions. And this is why we encourage people to do a practice like Zazen, because it's the only, we need something to drive us beyond the words that describe our life to life directly.